Good evening and welcome to The Caring View, the online talk show for social care with a platform for everybody. Before we get started, I just want to remind everyone that the views expressed in the show tonight are of us as individuals and probably not the companies we represent. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Don't forget to hit the share button if you can find it, because people can't, the little bell button. Hit that as well and you'll get notified every time we upload a new episode. Whilst we are talking tonight, we are talking about digitising social care. Technology is the future. The pandemic has taught us that. Tech isn't going anywhere, and it's about how ready we are to embrace it. So if you have any questions, pop them in the comments live. We will be able to see them. We'll bring them up and we'll discuss it with our two hosts later on. Before we get started, though, let's have a catch up. We're only a three today. Donna is still somewhere cruising in a caravan, living it up, eating fish and chips by the seaside. So it's just myself, Dawn and Mark. Dawn, Mark, how are we today?
I'm very well, thank you very much. Dawn, how are you?
I'm very good, thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah, so we were talking just before about the new guidance that came out.
PPE guidance.
PPE and the 5 visitor rules. So we had 2 in the space of a really short space of time. Yeah. So the PPE guidance, I think, dropped on the Friday.
I would say I was there waiting for it, but I'm on annual leave myself. Are you listening to me? I am on annual leave and I'm still here, Donna. I'm not in a caravan, but I'm still here. So I am aware that the new PPE guidance has come through, but I've not sat and read it myself, if I'm completely honest.
No, so it's basically saying that now we can wear our PPE, but it's more sessional rather than having to change it repeatedly throughout the day, which I have to hold my hands up to. I didn't make the staff do. I did for a few days, and then it seemed kind of ridiculous that we have no COVID, we have nobody symptomatic, everybody's been vaccinated. And then I'm asking the staff to change their PPE, or residents to change their PPE, or families to change their PPE who were visiting at the time so often. And then there was a massive change and they set back to sessional wearing of PPE for a shift. So
I was going to say, it was 16th of April, wasn't it? They told us that we had to change our masks every time we came in within 2 meters of somebody, which was just absolutely bonkers. I think I calculated that it took our mask usage, because we're domiciliary and care home, so it didn't really affect our domiciliary because we're doing that anyway. But for our care home, it took us up from needing something like 300 masks a week to needing 3,000 masks a week.
Yeah.
And
I run a 75-bed care home. So you can imagine, I sat calculating how many masks we would need for that period of time, and I think it worked out to 7,750 masks, which is crazy. And we have no COVID and no one symptomatic. We have families coming in and we ask them to use our masks, not the cloth masks that they could buy. So we ask them to use ours, and the thought of continuously going around telling everybody, it was just, so I will admit, I did say to the staff in the end, we will continue with our sessional use. So I was glad that this came out, but drop it so late on in the evening, towards the end of the week, I did think was utterly ridiculous.
I mean, I actually sat with a rep from the DHSC, Department of Health and Social Care, and they were like, so what's been your biggest challenge throughout the pandemic? And I was like, your guidance. And what really is it about your guidance? Everything. It comes out on a Saturday, on a Sunday, on a Friday evening. It's incoherent, it's unfair, it's discriminatory. Shall I go on? Just ridiculous. I understand that we need to consult on it. I understand that everyone needs to have the final say. But honestly, sit on it over the weekend and release it on a Monday so that we're all in work and we can put those plans in place and together. We don't want to be spending our weekends on this when we've just spent the last 14 months through a worldwide pandemic, not having time off. This is my first week off in 14 months before. I mean, I had COVID, but that's not really time off. And I worked while I had COVID. I worked from home. So I don't want to spend my time on it. I think, oh gosh, guidance coming out on a Saturday night. Woo!
Well, we all started and we were, we tried to follow as much as we could. And then it was walking around the building, and staff then got to the point where they didn't know when to change them, because it was that, I've come into contact, and domestic staff and kitchen staff and care staff and families, because another resident had walked close to them, and it just got to the point where it got a bit silly. Yeah. So we decided to risk assess it ourselves, look into it ourselves, and we decided sessional use was best for us, and we would change that if we had an outbreak.
Well, I mean, that's just logical, isn't it? I mean, the other piece of guidance that we got was this 5 visitor rule now, that people can have up to 5 constant visitors, which, again, I think has been terrible guidance, because it's made everyone think that 5 people can go together.
Yeah.
But when you read it, they're allowed 2 people, and those 2 people only for that day. You're not allowed to swap up those 2 people throughout the day. So I think the guidance itself is still very confused, and the way they've portrayed it, and the way it's been marketed, and the way the media have reported it, I think a lot of relatives have gone, oh, goody, we can have 5 visitors now. And don't get me wrong, a lot of providers out there have gone, oh, brilliant, finally we can get families together. But there are still those out there going, oh, that's nice. I'm not going to do it, though, because it's going to cause me too much work. And once again, we've got a piece of guidance where the government have literally stipulated in it, it's down to that care home to make that decision. Passing the bucket.
And I think, so it's completely open to interpretation again. So every time because we've been having meaningful contact since September, October last year, every time the guidance change, I get continuous messages on our social media pages for the care home, on our WhatsApp group, saying, oh my God, are you going to change this now? Can it only be 1 or only be 2? And this time it was, oh, so 6 of us can come in, so I can bring so and so, and it's we're not changing anything from what we're doing from last year, so everything's staying the same. But it's because of the constant changes and the way the media interprets that, and other care home managers interpret that, and providers. We then have the struggle as somebody who's enabled this, as probably you have, Adam, for months, of, oh, are you now going to change this because the guidance has changed? So it's reassurance for the families that are already coming in. Yeah. And I think that's where it goes wrong, because it's so massively open to interpretation.
Yeah. It still doesn't go far enough, does it? When you think that, us 3 could now meet, we could go to the cinema together, we could go to a restaurant together, but people living in a care home still can't see their families together, still can't go back out and spend time with their relatives in their own homes. The whole thing to me still seems ludicrous and so far behind what the rest of the general population are able to do.
Yeah, and that's the problem, is there's no parity. It's one rule for the rest of society, and yet again, people living in care homes are stigmatized, and it's all because the government cannot admit that it was through their own fault that we had the care home crisis at the beginning of last year. It wasn't that, I mean, don't get me wrong, there are some providers out there who are poor. Forgive me for saying that, but I honestly don't think we can call for change in social care unless we could admit there is a problem within social care. But I don't think we can tar the whole of social care with the same brush. No. I mean, we get it done, don't we? Media phones us, Sky News, BBC. Oh, can we come down? Because it must be amazing that your residents can go out now. And I'm like, well, they've been going out for the last 5 months. Oh, we don't want to know that. We want to know how excited they are that they can go out now. Well, really? They don't know any different, because we've stopped them.
No, so I had somebody ring me and say, oh, I was thinking I could come down and I could watch somebody go out with their family. And I said, well, that's kind of the norm here. We've been doing this for a while. Or I've had people say, oh, we'd love to film a reunion. Yeah. Well, you can see one from September, October last year. So, it's the whole media thing, and the way they interpret it as well is just gone to the point where it's not actually challenging the guidance either. So they're not challenging it to the point where actually sometimes it feels like the media celebrates this, and that's not something to be celebrated.
No, I mean, I'm not going to mention any names, BBC, but the amount of times that I've had a media representative phone me and go, oh, so what are you doing at the moment? I'm like, well, we're actually going out, and the relatives are able to take the mums and dads home and go and have cake and tea. Is that okay within the guidance? No. Oh, we can't report that. Oh, so you don't want to report that care homes are challenging the guidance because it's inhumane, it's derogatory, it's infantilizing. We've never had an outbreak at all. It's all working well, and our mental health and well-being is tip-top. Oh no, because it's against the guidance. So if the media don't want to challenge the guidance, and yet we read today that, you know, media are going to start reporting on all care homes who've had outbreaks and how many people have had COVID and have died from COVID. Don't get me wrong, fine, whatever, do what you want, but don't do it and then don't challenge the guidance that's restricting them from doing what they want to do. You know, you've got to be equal across the board, and that's really what this chat show's about now, isn't it? Because, you know, we may have people on here who have different views from us, but that's fine. We want to be able to allow these people to have that view and to have that say. I'm just thinking, because we have two fantastic guests joining us tonight. Mark, what was the other big development from this weekend that has sort of taken Twitter and LinkedIn by storm? It's fantastic. So yeah, Mark, what is it?
Yes. So for those of you that haven't seen, we have started in partnership with the National Care Association and the National Care Forum, and also the Institute of Health and Social Care Management, hashtag Green Heart for Social Care. So you might have seen over your social media that a lot of green hearts have started appearing at the end of people's profile names. We're very pleased that we led on this, following conversations with the Institute and the Social Care Innovators Group. And what we aim to do is to have green hearts just to represent social care, to show that you support social care, the staff that work within it, and just to, you know, raise that profile of the care industry.
I mean, I, for one, and I'm going to say this, and I know I'm going to get blowback for it, and I don't really care. I, for one, was absolutely dismayed last year when the rainbow got adopted by well, I don't know who adopted it first, but it got adopted is to celebrate the NHS. I think it was about hope and joy and, you know, the light at the end of the tunnel and all of that. But I come from the LGBTQIA+ community, and to overnight have our symbol of representation be shifted from what has stood for us for decades to celebrate the NHS, I took as a little disheartening, because they are blue. They have the blue hearts. We've had numbers of symbols for the NHS throughout the last 10 years to celebrate them, but there's been nothing for social care. So it was a case of, how do we celebrate care? Do we use the care badge that Matt Hancock never wears and was freely available for people to order? And something I learned, was it today or yesterday, it was freely available in all the devolved states of the United Kingdom, which is now only available in the United Kingdom because our government have bought it. So Wales, Scotland, Northern Ireland don't have access to the care badge. So it was a case of, why don't we have a symbol for social care? Everyone's always complaining that social care is never recognised and no one knows what we're talking about. And yet there's nothing to sit there and represent us and for people to go, I proudly support you. So yeah, when we were having those chats within the Social Care Innovators, it was a case of, why don't we use the green heart? Why don't we go with it? Do what the NHS are doing and let's get people on board. And my gosh, has it taken off? Like,
Yeah,
it's absolutely taken off.
The response has been humongous, and it's really positive. And I think, when we had those early chats, you and I, Adam, and the innovators, I couldn't sleep after that. I was like, let's do it. Why are we discussing it? Why don't we just put a post out there and go for it? And it's great that it's been backed, and it's great that the public have got behind it. So if you haven't got a green heart next to your name, make sure you add one and add the hashtag, Green Heart for Social Care.
Hashtag. Is that the symbol for hashtag? Am I down with the kids now? Is that
I have no idea.
Hashtag.
But I don't know whether that's or not. But
or is it Power Rangers? I'm not too sure. It's one of the two.
Maybe we should ask one of our digital guys, because they might know.
Yes. So, digitising social care. That's what we're all here to discuss tonight. I know Dawn's absolutely petrified. Sorry for calling you out on this, Dawn.
No.
But digitising social care, what does it mean? Is it the future? What are we facing? Has the pandemic taught us anything? So, Mark, you've invited the two guests tonight. So do you want to introduce them as I add them in?
Yes. So first of all, we've got Lorcan from Care Planner.
Hello.
And Sam from Log My Care.
Hi.
How are you both?
Good, yeah.
Yeah, well, thanks, Mark. Please don't ask me about hashtags, though.
Lorcan, any idea about hashtags?
About the symbol?
Not down with the kids, I'm sorry.
So we were really keen to talk about digitalisation in social care. So Adam and I are on a couple of manager forums. We quite often see it raised and spoken about, managers and providers that are having issues with which provider to go to, the kind of questions to ask. Some of them then end up tied into contracts. And we thought it'd be great to have a discussion tonight about, digitalisation, what it looked like before COVID hit, how you interpreted and how you saw digitalisation roll out during the pandemic, and what the future of social care looks like with a digital format. So I don't know, Lorcan, do you want to go first? Talk about
Sure.
kind of what it was like before COVID?
I mean, who are you, Lorcan? Where are you from? Who do you represent?
I'm Lorcan, and I'm the youth representative for the Caring View, I guess. I don't know anything about hashtags. I'm the marketing executive for Care Planner, and that's about it, really. I came over from Ireland about 2 years ago to start working for the first time in the care sector over here in the UK, working with Care Planner, and seeing things that try to take back the narrative, like the Green Heart for Social Care try to do, or you see them other times with the UK HCA or championing social care, good care stories, all that stuff. It's absolutely fantastic. I think it's brilliant what you're doing there, and very happy to be on here. When it comes to talking about the pandemic, or even talking about this idea that there's going to be a digital transformation or like a digital revolution of care, we certainly don't really like that term so much, or that mindset of approaching it, because it kind of makes it seem like care is one way and then technology came and now it's another way. And that's just not true. First off, technology is already in care, and it's already in care in a myriad number of ways. You might use WhatsApp or Messenger to talk to people. You might use Google Maps to find out where you're going to a new house. Loads of different things that are publicly sector as well as sector specific technology. And carers, as you guys know, are incredibly resourceful people. So if they have anything available to them that they can use to try and make something work slightly better, they will. So this idea that you're going to bring technology in, or that carers have to learn how to use technology in order to cause this big transformation, we don't buy into it. It's almost patronizing. Technology has to learn how to best meet the needs of care. And, as I'm sure Sam will attest to this as well, suppliers who really know what they're doing, who are really dedicated to the sector, that's what they do. They listen and they work with their customers or the people using their system to better meet its needs. So that for us is kind of how we view it, because ultimately, as everyone here would know, technology can't replace the fundamental part about care. It can't. Like, care at its base, you validate existence. You go to people and you say, by the way, in case you're starting to forget, or in case you're starting to think society doesn't treat you this way, you're still a person. You're a person and you matter. And technology will never be able to do that. What technology can do is it can breed efficiency and effectiveness. So it can create for effectiveness through information, and then efficiency through systems. And all of that has to go back to servicing the care. And none of that really transforms it. It's more of like a digital assistance or a digital augmentation, if you're really into polysyllabic words. And that's kind of how we view it. And we saw that kind of matched with trends. We did our own internal research. There's also research available from like some of the bigger social platforms. Sorry, I know I'm talking about, I'll stop after this. And we didn't see exponential increase in usage of technology in the sector, both in our internal things. So we took a few different examples, same group of people using our system, but certain elements of it, like diary entries, things that slightly more involved use of the system. Are you just using it for the basic things? Are you using the extra parts? And we saw it increase over that time, but we didn't see it like explode. There was a slight acceleration, sure. But to us, the lack of exponential increase just shows that this is a natural progression, something that's already happening. And with care being decentralized as it is, there's a lot of examples of it happening in different places. Much like, you'd hear things like Donna Hall with the Wigan Agreement when it comes to trying to change how care is done and bring in new ideas there, Stephen Chandler up in Oxford. So that when it comes to technology, it's the same thing. And these good ideas will hopefully pop up. They'll be used in certain ways, and then will slowly become more integrated as it develops. And that's what we see for the future, which I can get into more now, but I don't want to just dominate this conversation. So I suppose just the main point I would say there is we didn't see the huge increase, and it's not like it's a transformation. It was already happening. It's a natural progression. It is in service to the fundamental thing it can never replace. So to us, it's more of like digital assistance.
Me next.
Yeah, thank you very much. Sorry, I was trying to unmute and my button wouldn't work. So yes,
I tried to unmute and turn my camera off. Professional. So Sam, yeah, you're Log My Care, aren't you? So have you noticed any difference? Who are you? You know, what's your company about? And have you noticed anything
Sure.
different in the pandemic?
Yeah, so I'll start with me. I founded Log My Care about 4 years ago now, so relatively young company in the space, quite a new entrant. Been very fast growing since we launched, about 3 years ago, and I kind of it's quite difficult. Well, I guess what we do is electronic care planning, and we're trying to make it accessible to everyone. I think a lot of people used to get priced out, or there used to be a lot of barriers to adoption of technology, and we've tried to knock down as many of those barriers as physically possible. And I think for us and our growth, it's quite difficult to unpick whether we were growing really quickly before COVID and would have grown really quickly anyway, or whether COVID has accelerated it. We've roughly quadrupled our customer base, kind of pre and post pandemic. So I can't complain about that. It's been a really amazing time for business for us. And I think a lot of that comes down to the need for, I think the whole infection control thing has pushed people towards tech. I think the whole need for greater monitoring, be that on site or also remote, has also, we've seen a vast increase in that, particularly temperature recordings. I guess you guys have probably had to do a lot more of that now than before. We've seen a ridiculous explosion in temperature recording in our software. It's 100x or 50x. It's ridiculous. So we have seen that big increase in usage in certain areas. But for us, I think it's the biggest change has almost been how technology is sold in, how it actually is getting into services. We were always, we being a tech company really liked using tech to interact with people beforehand, right? We would always demo over Zoom instead of spending 6 hours on the train, because it meant we could speak to 8 people a day instead of 1. And we were willing to kind of make that slight personal trade-off for being able to speak to so many more people. So we didn't have to change very much the way that we were selling our software in. And the biggest change I think I've seen anecdotally is how comfortable everyone is now with what I'd call other base technologies like Zoom, Teams, email even. It used to be so difficult to get a manager to turn up on time to a meeting, and now it just happens 90% of the time. It used to be probably 20% of the time. And so that's, I think those kind of everyday technologies have really pushed confidence levels up just generally in the sector. And then that in itself has then led to more care-based technologies, I think, feeling like a less scary next step.
I completely agree. Before the pandemic hit, everything was meetings in person. You'd go for one meeting in the day. You'd claim 2 hours commute. You'd get there. You'd claim 2 hours commute back. You'd go to work, make sure everything was okay, and you'd go home. And nowadays, it's right. Well, I've just left one meeting. I'm into another. I'm into another. I'm into another. And I know Mark will definitely agree with this. But sometimes it feels like we are literally meeting jumping nowadays because Zoom has made things so much more accessible. So when we talk digitization of care, we're not just talking about digital care planning. We're talking about digital everything. And I, for one, exactly, Lorcan, exactly. It is a holistic thing now with digitization. I, for one, fear that the digitization of the sector is probably evolving faster than, say, the digital health and well-being of managers, potentially. I don't know whether you agree, Dawn. I think overnight we've had to face a lot more technical challenges. How did you cope with the sudden reliance on technology?
Not very well, as you're all very aware. I don't, you know, I really struggle with
You're on
digital.
mute.
I'm not. I'm not. I know I'm not. So I do massively struggle with it. I struggle from one concept where I worry that the whole holistic approach is completely taken away because everything's digital. And then I worry that I'm not keeping up with what could be the next step for the future. And I think that is because I had a really bad experience with a electronic mask system. And it's like it scarred me for life. So to me, is it going to be the holistic approach that I'm getting? I'm aware of what I'm getting at the moment. I struggle with Teams, as Adam knows. I struggle with WhatsApp most of the time. And I'm also adverse to change because I already know what I'm getting and I already understand what I'm getting. And I've done this job for a long time. So I've worked in social care since 1996. So I struggle with that concept of, are we going to move on to something that we don't actually need? And maybe that is just my way of thinking, but I think that I need a lot of I'd need a lot of assistance and I'd need a lot of help. Lorcan, you would need a 24-hour helpline just for me because I would struggle. My current service where I'm the manager, they're talking about CCTV. Massively, let's do it. But at the same time, I'm thinking, oh my God, I've got to look after this. So I do struggle with that. And I think that it's understanding and having a knowledge of what is to come. And I think that that's what needs to be inputted to care managers across this country, that we've done this and we've got over COVID and we've done Zoom and we've done Teams and we've done everything we can to enable communication between everybody. But now we need to move on to the next step. And I think even Teams was a big step for me.
I mean, if we're honest, Teams is a bit rubbish. I mean, you've all got to turn your webcams off just for it to work. So, I mean, Teams isn't the best thing out there, but it is Microsoft, so what do we expect?
To be quite honest, I dial in. I literally dial in on the phone because it's easier for me. And I say, oh, sorry, my computer, it's not working, my camera. I'll dial in to avoid the whole, am I on mute? Is it working? And that's Teams, let alone something as digital as Care Planner or Log My Care.
And not to make this generational, because, you know, I'm not an aged person whatsoever, and there are some people out there who are older than me who are way more into technology than myself. But predominantly, I mean, we turned digital for our domiciliary 2 years ago. We turned digital for our care home just before the pandemic last year. And those who were more adverse to it were of the older generations, because technology is still new to them. You know, I think it was before the millennium, people said there was only going to be 50 million people with a mobile phone. And as the millennium hit, the majority of everyone had a mobile phone. I don't think people understood how fast technology was going to evolve. And I think we do have to understand that, yes, we do need to get the technology out there, but there needs to be that support system out there for managers within social care, not from the providers of this technology. That's not their job to do. It's for the government to make sure that the sector is supported technology-wise to be able to enable this. I mean, Mark, in your role, I mean, I know big top regional now. I'm never going to let you live this down. I think it's fab. But technology, do your services use technology? How do you find it? What's your views?
Yes, so all of our services use it as part of the franchise model. The service that I came from, though, didn't use technology. And I think it wasn't because we didn't want to use it. It's because, like Dawn said, it was trying to find the right one that fitted with what our residents needed. And I think we met with so many different companies, care provider or tech providers. We asked the questions. And I think one thing that we quite often get, or that I definitely get asked, is, which company do you recommend? Because the last thing that somebody wants is to be tied into a contract. So I don't know whether Lorcan and Sam, you can speak to us maybe about the top 3 things that you can think of that providers could come to you and ask.
I'll jump in first. Yeah, I think, like, listening especially to Dawn, I hear a lot of this every day, and so it's very familiar. And I could be completely wrong here, but it feels like it's your comfort level is here and technology might be here and there's a gap. And so we worry a lot about that gap and how to bridge it. And the best solutions that we've come up with is encouraging people to go really slowly. So just sort of tiny baby steps. And so I would be kind of worried, going back to the question, I'd be worried if you couldn't get your hands on some software before you actually had to start implementing it and going live. I'd be worried if you are probably paying for it before you have to do that. And I would always say to people, like, start small, like, try that out, run like a paper process and a digital process in parallel until people are comfortable, and then like gently expand as that comfort level, as it comes within your comfort level. And so yeah, it's little things like, don't get tied into a contract when you haven't played around with it. Try and not get tied into a contract if you can, because you never know when you might want to get out of it. And yeah, test it first, get your hands on it. Put it, like, create dummy service users and get your teams using it as well, because they'll feedback a lot. So I think those are my key bits.
Yeah, I would reiterate those. I think those make a lot of sense, and it kind of, the first tip I would give is very much in line with those, which is know what your needs are and then start looking for technology that actually matches them. Like, don't get swept up in this, you must have technology, or look at this brand new thing, or the CQC is now requiring records to be provided X way. Look at what your needs are as a company and then start looking at technology. How can it improve it? So maybe you have carers and you've been having a hard time having a consistency through the care of one person because you had to keep changing carers. Well, maybe you should look into digital care plans. Maybe you're finding yourself spending 12 hours doing up rosters every month by hand. Maybe you should look into electronic rostering. Those little things, the needs and how you can match them. And just expanding on that a little bit, like some of the technology when you're shopping around, it can be quite modular, or it can be an all-in-one system. It can, like Sam was saying, it can be 12-month contract, it can be rolling contracts. Little things to just keep in mind. Know the need, match the technology to it. Recruitment could be another thing that can really help with that point of care as well. The second tip I would give, this is quite a technical one. So if you just wanted to write anything down, it would just be API, which is 3 letters, Application Programming Interface. Basically, and this is what people smarter than me with glasses told me to say. So Adam and Dawn, you can verify this. Well, Adam and Mark, you can all verify if this is true. Basically, API is how machines talk to each other. And it's as simple as that. So what this does is it future-proofs you. So as new things are developed, and again, this gets back to what Sam's saying, maybe you don't need it all at once, you just need it for one thing. And maybe you can just integrate that slowly. Take your time with it. Get everyone comfortable, and then start looking at other things. That's a perfectly fine way to do it. And if it has an API that leaves it open-ended for you, if new things will come out, they'll have APIs so they can talk to them because it's a new technology, or other ones that are on the market right now. It just allows you to take your time with it, and it allows you to slowly build something that is truly benefiting those needs we were talking about. And the last one, I think this is very present or very worthwhile for you as well, Dawn, is technology, just like anything else, has people behind it. What are the people like behind the technology you're buying? You're going to have to be onboarded. There's going to be something that happens on a Friday evening where everything's laid out for the next week and somebody goes to print send and then or hit send and then they accidentally hit backspace and now there's 3 days of appointments just gone. Little things like that can happen. User error is big with technology. What is the support like? What are the account teams like at the technology you have? Do they have a 24-hour service, Dawn, that you can call because it's 3 o'clock in the morning and if you don't get this solved in the next few hours, someone's not getting looked after tomorrow morning? Those kind of questions. If you're gonna need some help with it, are they willing to do it? Do they have an account manager for you? Is it someone you can call? Does it cost money to call them? Things like that. The people behind the tech. So those would kind of be my 3 points. The first one, know your needs, match your technology to it. Second one, API, 3 little letters, Application Programming Interface. And the third one, what are the people like behind the technology?
I mean, all great points, and just that point about what is your 24-hour support like. I remember when we started, and I won't plug them tonight because we've got 2 wonderful companies on with us. I don't use either of the companies, I do apologise. But I remember when we first got our domiciliary digital software, I know, I'm sorry, Logan, but when we first got our domiciliary software in place, I was like, oh, this is it. Everything's in place. We'd done 2-3 weeks of onboarding with the phone. So we were doing it on the phone and the paperwork at the same time. We'd got to a point where we could take away the paperwork. I'd set everything up. I'd gone home for the evening. It was Friday evening. And I got a phone call saying, such and such isn't on my route for tomorrow on my phone. What do you mean they're not on your phone? Well, they're not on my phone. Well, then you can't do the meds. You can't fill the care notes out. You can't log in. What's going on? And it was a complete fault on my end. I'd not set something right up on the system, so they weren't showing up as a required visit. And I phoned up straight away and I was like, look, it's Friday evening. It's 8 o'clock. I'm panicking. What do I do? And they sorted it there and then. So it is paramount to have that support behind you, because the last thing you want to do is go into a weekend and not do any care notes, not be able to do any care records, not have anything printed for you to be able to write on. It's just a nightmare, because you don't have your mark sheets there, because everything is then digital. So I was quietly confident. I sit here all smug thinking, oh, I'm fine, I can do this. I adapted during the pandemic perfectly. We put in communication sheets and everything like that. But for everyone else, it's not always the same. Now, we have done a poll, and I know we talked about this before we went live. We're not entirely confident that the results of this poll are accurate. We're going to put it up and we'll have a bit of a discussion. So we asked a number of networks that we're involved with, how comfortable do you feel with using technology in care? And predominantly, we've got a lot of very comfortables. But Mark, we know by being in peer support groups and being people that support people, other managers generally, that this might not be the case. What do you reckon?
Yeah, when I saw these results earlier, I did think to myself that I would have thought there would have been a lot more either somewhat comfortable or definitely a lot more not comfortable at all. And it makes me wonder whether people that aren't comfortable haven't filled it in, or whether they don't want to admit that they're not comfortable. But yeah, I'm definitely surprised that it's 57% very comfortable, given what we see on a lot of the peer support groups that we're in.
I mean, Dawn, have you voted?
The whole 14% of not comfortable at all was me. I just kept logging in because I wanted to have some gumption behind it, so there wasn't just the 1%.
At least you knew how to do that, Dawn.
Only because Adam and Mark and Donna have spent the last 6 months teaching me how to do it.
I don't think Dawn gives herself enough credit here, because she is always on WhatsApp and leaving us voice notes and videos and whatnot. So she's definitely up with tech more than she lets on. She's
with WhatsApp.
You know, sometimes it's like, oh, Dawn's deleted a message from such and such a group. She's got the wrong group again.
Yeah, honestly, I think as well, my concentration span isn't the greatest. So I've got to have something, especially at work when I'm dealing with residents and families and staff. I've got to have something that's going to keep me going, and I've got to have something that is quick to use and that I know will give me the results straight away. Because at the moment, I could pick up a paper folder, open it, know where I'm looking. And I think with me, I've got to have that as well. There's got to be that quick turnaround.
Yeah. I mean, Sam, do these results on this poll surprise you? Is this something you would expect when we do like a survey with care managers, care providers?
I'd say this probably looks about right. If I was thinking of our customer base who have already implemented, how many are actually, maybe I'd hope for more very comfortable, but those, if I was then looking at the other end of the spectrum of those who still haven't, and that's still the majority of providers, I would say this paints a rosy picture. And I think we would have had a very interesting, different set of data if we'd ask, how comfortable do you feel using social media or other tools? And that would have been really interesting to see what's the difference between in care and in our personal lives. Because we find, a lot of people say, oh, I can't use tech. I'm like, well, are you using Facebook and email and WhatsApp and, a baby cam, any kind of, all these things actually add up. And I think a lot of people are surprised at how much tech they use when they write it all down.
I mean, really interesting point. We were talking about technology in our pre-meet, weren't we, Lorcan? And I was talking about how people are afraid that technology is going to create a service of robots that are going to go in and provide all this care for people. Because, you know, throughout the pandemic, we have seen these little robots that roll into people's bedsides who are dying with a big iPad face and a big smile, and it's like something out of Black Mirror. But I think you were talking about, Lorcan, when I said to you we use robots in our care home, and we use robotic pets and robotic animals. And, you know, they are there, they're tactile, they're responsive. The more you stroke them, the more they purr, they roll over, they lift their arms up, they wag the tails and all of that. And I think when we try and explain technology to people, especially when we talk about robotic therapies, it's not a case, and it's like what you said at the beginning, Logan, it's not a case of replacing, it's an add-on. It's to supplement everything else that we're already giving. So when we start talking about robotic animals, I think one of the responses I got from CQC way back when we first started in implementing them in the home was, is this so that your staff don't have to spend as much time with your residents? And I was like, no, it's because this chap used to have cats throughout his entire life and his end of life, and he actually sits on his bed and purrs while he's on his own. So it adds that extra comfort for him. We can't be with him 24/7, and it works as a supplement. So, like you were saying, Sam, technology isn't just these digital care plannings. Technology is absolutely everything. And I think once we get ourselves out of that bubble, out of that box of what technology actually is, we could all sit there and go, actually, I do probably feel quite confident. What do you think of the poll, Rock, and the results?
Well, I thought it was quite in line with the kind of trends that we've seen as well. And I very much agree with what you say there, like the idea that it's a supplement, because there is a fear technology is going to come and like replace all these things, or it's all going to be automated as soon as possible. Because with other sectors, manufacturing comes to mind immediately as something that you can automate to a large extent. And maybe there's the comparable fear there is the constant pursuit of fiscal efficiency that tends to happen, does lead to further automation. But you just can't do it with care. And it's exactly like that. Think of how specific the need was for somebody to come up with the idea to invent that little robot cat, and how much time they must have spent with people like your service users who would benefit from it. That's the kind of technological advancement that we're talking about, and that you do see in the care sector from a lot of suppliers. And it doesn't surprise me, like you guys are all talking about, when you stop and think about how much technology you deal with every day, or just how much technology is constantly around you, especially if you spent all this time in your house, it's a really astounding. And you'd be surprised just how fluent you are in technology and how translatable that fluency is. So it can be quite daunting, and everything's daunting until it isn't really. But there's ability to take your time. If it's new technology for the company, like I said, people to guide you along the way can be helpful. And that doesn't necessarily have to be the support of certain technologies. I mean, you might have younger people working in the company who are more comfortable with these things. Like the digital literacy of my brother, who's 10 years younger than me compared to me, is insane. The things he can do with phone. Like I'd just be messaging him normally and I'm starting to get like personalized gifts back within 5 minutes, which is very touching, but like scary and confusing as well. But he has a dark artistic sense. But no, I'm not surprised by the poll so much. I think it is kind of in keeping with trends of how things are going. And I would just hope that people realize like maybe you could be a bit of a Luddite like Dawn, but you're still an incredibly smart person who's incredibly successful. And with time, that's the real word. I know you used a different word at the start of this. The word is Luddite. That's not rude. I mean, someone who's not great with technology. You used a different word. But if you just take your time with it, you'd be surprised what you can learn and surprised what you can achieve.
I'm going to change your name next week, Dawn, to Dawn the Luddite. I think it's brilliant. It's like a superhero name, isn't it?
I think we've touched on something really more than I thought we would in terms of technology. And I'm thinking back to kind of when I was managing the care home, and when COVID hit, going out and just buying Alexa devices for the home, which was something that none of the residents that I looked after had ever seen before. But actually, when I left the service, you know, we would be in front of that Alexa, up and down that corridor, dancing to the cheesiest 90s songs all day long. But actually, the impact that it had on the residents' lives was humongous. Just being able to, you know, ask what the news was, the weather, playing their favourite songs, and just watching people come to life. You know, we had people living with a learning disability and dementia that normally you know, would sit there or not engage, but actually put on their favourite songs or songs from, you know, like Jamaica or, you know, just different songs or, you know, storybooks, whatever. Just watching them come to life was actually really rewarding to see and engaging, and just provoked new conversations with them. So I think, yeah, definitely when we talk about technology, I think we do think about digital care plans and email, but actually there is so much more.
I mean, was it in our Facebook group, the Caring View Support Network, Mark, where we posted a question and basically asked, you know, how confident do you feel with technology, with implementing it, and what would be the questions, concerns that you had? And I think it was a relative who posted, because the support network we've got on Facebook is for everyone. It's not just for providers. And they were like, well, I'm confident with technology. It's absolutely fine. But my parents who are in a care home probably wouldn't be able to manage it, and it's probably not suitable for them. So I think there's also this misunderstanding at times that the word technology is an umbrella, and it's quite an ambiguous one. And when we say we're going to implement technology, it's not about making our people's lives difficult, the people who use our services. It is to enhance them. So I don't know, maybe I'm asking Locke and Sam. The technologies, I mean, the planning software that I use allows me to have a direct line of communication with our relatives. You know, they can have direct input. I can create forms. They give us compliments and complaints at any time that they want to. They can update us with any changes. We can update them. So this technology out there is also to support those who are relatives of those we're supporting, aren't they? You know, and this pandemic, if it's taught us anything, is the value of communication. So what do you think about how technology can help and improve communication?
Yeah, I think if you're talking about implementing things now, it's mostly to, you know, ease the processes you've already got in place. You've probably already got mechanisms for speaking to families, for sending newsletters, for, you know, whatever those channels are. You know, there are just ways of doing it smoother and easier and live, and not spending 2 hours doing it and it just happening. Yeah, I think it's just easing channels that already exist, really. You know, we had to build a family app to complement our product during the pandemic. Like, we kind of canned the rest of our roadmap and focused on that because we thought it was important, and it was. And you know, there's been like so many lovely comments we've had back, like, for just having put it in place. And it, you know, that information was still there before. It's just made it a bit, you know, more freely available to the people who needed to see it.
I'm always on mute. And I try and unmute myself, and I'm terrible at doing it. Look, I saw you on mute, so you can come in and stop me embarrassing myself.
No, please keep going. It's fantastic. No, I suppose I would just reiterate a lot of that. We, like, Care Planner is a rostering software, so it's not the sexiest thing in the world. But obviously, the family portal is very necessary, and we integrate through API, which doesn't we integrate with family portals because it has become one of those things you absolutely need. And it's one of those ways that technology can use communication to bring people closer together, in effect, and bring them more informed. Because that's a big thing about communication. Like, there is a loss of communication, or basically a complete drop of it, between the NHS and the social care system. So when you look at things like white paper that came out, integration and innovation, yada, 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 that was a big thing for them, was pushing this well-being, this continuous stream of care. I know you guys have talked about it. Other big groups I've listened to have talked about the idea of social care becoming more accepted as a natural part of your life. You know, you're born, you go to primary school, you go to secondary school, college, job, social care. And, you know, should we all be lucky enough to make it there, we should all hope to be in social care one day. And this idea that you could build communication through all of these different systems, through like what we were saying, or what I was saying, looking to the future and it all being integrated. It's communication between systems, communication of information. And this creates this wealth of information that everyone can withdraw from and contribute to regarding the care of a single person. And every single person could have one of those. So when you start thinking about how technology can help keep families more involved in the process, how can it start to take other things that are outside of the social care sector? So other third-party treatments they might be receiving. Things like healthcare with the NHS, maybe they used to be super into football and their local football club has been starting to experiment with live streaming games. There's a wealth of things that validate people as people that we can start to connect more and more using technology. And it doesn't just have to be on the care side of things from a health point of view, but on the care side of things from the social point of view as well.
Completely agree. I couldn't have said it better myself. Now, we've not got much longer left, and I do feel like I want to give Dawn the opportunity to ask a life-saving question, potentially. So, Dawn, there's someone who is slightly concerned about the implementation of technology, and I know we've pulled your leg throughout this evening, and I love you, Green Heart. You know, I do. What is your biggest concern? If you have, like, if you could ask Sam and Lorcan now one question that you would like answering to help give you some more sort of oomph to get into digital, what would it be?
I think with me, it's about training. I think, like I said earlier, I had personally a terrible experience with an electronic MAR, put me off for life, and since then I've completely retracted back. So I've done the Zoom, I've done the Teams. Just to me, that's a massive feat for me. That's way up here. When Lorcan and Sam were giving it up, yeah, I'm up here at the moment. So I think with me, it would be training and support, because it's not just, like I said, we're a large care home. We are 75 residents. We employ over 100 odd staff. And I think it would be training everybody in the implementation. I think that's what's daunting. And as you've probably heard, I'm not the best person for that. So I think with me, that would be my concern, that we would have to train so many people, and if I have somebody leave, then that person needs training, and whose responsibility is that, and keeping on top of that. I love the thought of relatives being able to log into something and being able to see what mum or dad or auntie, uncle, nanny, granddad has got up to that morning. I love the thought of that, without having to try and get through. If we're busy in the morning, a doctor's on the phone, they can't get through to a particular area of the home. I love the thought of that, but it is just that training element and the staff having that understanding to bring it forward.
I guess this is where we jump in and say, oh, sorry, Adam.
No. I was trying to turn my mic off. So, Sam, Lorcan, final comments on that, and I turned my camera off instead. Technology.
Yeah, I think like from at least what my experience of like implementing in hundreds of services now in the sector, it's I think the T word is a bit strong when it comes to our software. Like, I don't think it needs training. It's probably quite a big statement, but like what we do now is we have a 20-minute video to watch if you're a manager, a 10-minute one if you're a carer, and that tells you 90% of what you're gonna need to know, and the rest of it you can get from variety of other sources, articles, more video. We do Zoom trainings as well. So it's not. I don't think it's as serious. And I'm sorry if I'm playing this down, but I don't think it's as serious as I've got a new carer on, I need to worry about training them up. Like in almost all of our services, I think they just give them the app and say, have you used Facebook before? Okay, yeah, off you go. And someone else, like, the main thing is really knowledge transfer. Like, the more your team as a unit has used a software, the more they've seen how and learned how your organization wants them to use it, the more that they should really be helping each other, because there's us training you on how it works, and then there's a whole separate topic which we can't help you with, which is how your organization wants to do things with our tool. Because there'll be tons of features you won't care about of ours, but some that are super important, and some that you will use in a maybe slightly nuanced way because of your residents or the physical setup of your home. So I think it's all about knowledge transfer, not so much training, in my view.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say, yeah, you'd need training to an extent, certainly with some things, and some things you don't. And I do believe there is a massive amount of competency that's already there in the workforce, just naturally through using public sector technology. still think it comes back to those two things I was saying with the top tips. One is making sure the needs are matched. So if you really do think and you can really pin down what it is you're looking to improve with the technology, then you'd be surprised at how quickly those things do slide together. And then again, if you had that EMAR situation like you did, Dawn, or some kind of bad experience, what are the people like behind it? What is the onboarding process like? Sure, some things you might not need training for. Some things you will need training for. And sometimes you'll have a care coordinator who leaves to go to a different company, and you have to bring in another one. And is there going to be onboarding between between them and the new care coordinator? Is the onboarding going to happen with the company? Do you trust the company? These are all things you have to keep in mind. Like, there are people behind it, and those people, like, I'm sure Sam would agree with me on this. You cannot work within the care sector and not be affected by it. You can't. Even as suppliers, when we are that degree removed, the work, the effort and empathy I see, it blew me away when I first started working in the sector. And that's when we did our own little Champion Social Care. It was like 12 Cares to Christmas thing. And at the time, there wasn't a lot shouting about it, and it's gotten a lot better. But just how empathetic and the amazing work you guys do really does rub off on the suppliers and the people that we have in our support sections. So you should have someone who you can lean on to help in that regard, to help you get more comfortable with the technology. And if it gets to a point where it's a detriment rather than an augmentation or an assistance, maybe that technology isn't for you, which is a totally fine thing to do. And again, gets back to what me and Sam were saying earlier about being wary of the longer contracts, or being wary of anybody who doesn't give you a cooling off period, like a training time, the chance to play around with it for a while, you know? So it's one of those things where it's like, don't doubt yourself too much, because you're capable of anything that's worth doing. But then you kind of have to work out, is it worth doing? Does it meet the needs you have? Are the people worth working with? Do they get how important what you do is? You know? So yeah, it's very natural. It's very natural. It's just one of those things.
And I think it comes down to the C word that we're always talking about, which is culture. And, you know, if you not that C word, Mark, if you can get culture in place and that culture running throughout your services, then if one person leaves, it should be something that just carries over because that culture's there. I would also say, though, if you remove all paperwork and the paperwork's not an option, there is no other option but to get on board. You know, we were all training people to use different forms and different tools and different paperworks when it's paperwork care planning. And it is, for me, exactly the same. You just have to have that level of confidence in showing people what to do. And it's an opportunity for a lead role within your service. If there's someone in your team who you think is more adapted than yourself and takes to it like a duck on water, then just go, look, it is your responsibility to help induct people on doing the digital care planning and delegating and passing some of that responsibility, you know, recognizing the strengths that are out there. I think that wraps up our chat nicely. Every week, I always say we could go on and on and on and on and on, but we've been on air nearly an hour now. So Lorcan from careplanner.co.uk and Sam from logmycare.co.uk, their information is scrolling across the bottom of the screen. If you are interested in taking part in adopting digital softwares, we recommend one of these two. Whichever ones you choose is completely up to you. But they both sound absolutely fantastic after this evening. Next week, we have got our Donna back. So no doubt the first 40 minutes of the show, we're going to be hearing about the caravan. No, I'm joking. We can't wait to have Donna back. We can't wait to welcome her back to the group. What have we got on next week? Who are our guests? What's the topic of discussion? Mark, our planner.
Oh gosh, now you put me on the spot, and I cannot remember. Dawn, over to you. What have we got next week?
It's marketing next week. It's marketing the care sector.
It is indeed. And when we say marketing, we're not talking boring, you know, what are your Google Analytics and how do you use this on Facebook and all of that. Yes, we'll probably touch on that. But as many people will know, the care sector has been absolutely devastated by the COVID-19 pandemic. And there are so many providers out there who, through no fault of their own, have had outbreaks sweep through their services and are struggling to get back on their feet because their occupancy levels are low. And there's got to be a way now where we can market ourselves better to utilize the work that we do, not rely on just word of mouth anymore. So we're going to have some fab guests on talking about how we can specialize our marketing post-COVID recovery. I think it's going to be really interesting. I love marketing. I'm a marketing geek. I'm always looking at marketing ideas. I know Mark is as well. He's a little forlorn and sullen tonight, but I'm sure he'll be tip-top for next week. So unless anyone's got anything else to bring up, I'm gonna stop the show now. But just a huge thank you for Sam and Lorcan for joining us. And don't forget, follow us on Twitter. Use the hashtag #GreenHeart for social care. Pop a green heart in your name. It actually is a little bit more difficult than you think about, but there's one of us always on hand to help guide you on that. And let's, you know, raise this awareness of social care. Let's use this opportunity now to bring a voice to the sector. So yeah, once again, thank you much for joining us, and we will see you next week.
Thank you.